So, Turkish President Erdogan and Zelensky discussed different options for ending the armed conflict in Ukraine. This was announced by President Erdogan himself after talks with the head of the Kyiv regime when talking to the press. Erdogan said that he considers it important to resume the Istanbul negotiation process between the delegations of Russia and Ukraine. At the same time, Erdogan went to the press with Zelensky. He called the meeting productive and said that, whatever that means, a lot of processes have been activated to end the war. Zelensky says the conflict must end. Zelensky really has nowhere to go. The Russian army is moving forward. Russia can defeat the collective West. This conclusion was reached by senior Lithuanian officials in the field of foreign policy and defense at a closed-door meeting in Vilnius. According to the German newspaper Bild, experts are in a panic. European armies are not ready for war. They buy mainly those weapons systems that are practically useless in modern warfare. In particular, German Defense Minister Boris Pistorius is guilty of this, who only pays lip service to the balance of old and new systems, but in fact he is being led by the lobby of defense concerns. Berlin looked like a war zone against this background. All this is a consequence of the large-scale military exercises of the Bundeswehr, which are being held right in the center of the German capital. These military exercises were announced after the statement of the same German Defense Minister Pistorius about the Russian threat. In his opinion, Moscow will be ready to attack NATO as early as 2028, and possibly even earlier. Mike Tachgever, commander of the Bundeswehr Security Battalion, noted that the purpose of the exercises is to practice actions in the worst-case scenario of military events. This refers to an attempt to capture Berlin by enemy troops. Against the background of communication disruption and poor visibility. During the week-long maneuvers, German snipers climbed onto the roofs of the capital's buildings. They began to train to aim at enemy troops. At this time, the infantrymen practice fighting in urban conditions and evacuating the wounded, as well as they train to protect government facilities. For the first time in the history of the city, military exercises are held directly in the subway. According to the scenario, it was captured by the enemy, that is, by Russian saboteurs. Some of the trains derailed according to the scenario. There's a tantrum in London right now over the Russian science ship Yantar. It was spotted this time off the coast of Scotland. Yantar is an oceanographic research ship that belongs to the Russian Northern Fleet. It is used to explore the oceans at great depths. It is known that the Yantar ship is equipped with special underwater vehicles. But the Russian Defense Ministry, for obvious reasons, does not disclose exactly what equipment it has and what kind of research this ship is conducting. In the West, our Amber is called a spy ship. They believe that it is mapping Europe's underwater critical infrastructure. Of course, there is no evidence. Previously, this ship had already been spotted in the area of Britain. Each of its appearances causes the most inappropriate reaction. Yantar was even accompanied by NATO warships. Right now, the British are agitated again. British Defence Minister Healey says that the Russian ship allegedly behaved extremely dangerously. It tried to blind British spies with lasers. The outraged British Defence Minister threatens Moscow with, quote, military options. And he addresses Putin directly. As I say this now, the Russian Yantar reconnaissance ship is on the border of British waters north of Scotland, which has been entering wider UK waters in the past few weeks. This ship is designed to collect intelligence and map our submarine cables. We deployed a Royal Navy frigate and British Air Force aircraft to track every movement of this ship, during which Yantar directed lasers at our pilots. These actions by Russia are extremely dangerous, and this is the second time this year that this Yantar ship has been in UK waters. That's why my message to Russia and Putin is, we see you, we know what you're doing, and if Amber heads south this week, we'll be ready. Putin continues to escalate in Ukraine. Over the past year alone, we have witnessed the appearance of a large number of drones in the skies over Europe. The number of cases of Russian violations of NATO airspace has doubled, and 90,000 cyber attacks have been carried out on the British defense system. A new era of threats has begun, and it requires new ways to protect itself. This is the era of hard power, strong allies. And, of course, the time of diplomacy. But NATO is not ready for war with Russia, according to the British edition of the Daily Telegraph. The military bloc lacks even basic resources, including TNT. Europe's only manufacturer of explosives, the Polish state-owned Nitrochem plant, is unable to meet the growing demands of European militarists. An attempt to rectify the situation is being made by the Swedish company Sviba. It plans to build a factory that will increase TNT production in Europe by 75%. And given the shortage of explosives needed to create artillery shells, Latvia has found alternative ways to escape from Russia. It all sounds pretty anecdotal, but it's real. The Lithuanians decided to restore the drained peat bogs so that Russian tanks would not reach Riga, so that they would get stuck, and, if possible, so that they would sink into the swamp. This is a crazy idea, however, it is not new. In the summer with the plan to create a NATO swamp shield, this is the official name of the project, Poland, Lithuania, and Finland were involved. They proposed creating a huge chain of marshes along the border with Russia and Belarus, from the Finnish Arctic through the Baltic states, through the Suwalki corridor to eastern Poland. Over time, this idea seemed to die out. Apparently, the West realized that swamps still cannot stop missiles and drones, and infantry and armored vehicles will be able to overcome these swamps in winter, when the water freezes in them. But the Latvian geniuses of military thought have not yet reached this stage. Zelensky himself has just stated in Turkey that Kyiv intends to resume the prisoner exchange with Russia by the end of the year. And Turkey, the official Ankara, is ready to contribute to this. Erdogan called for the resumption of the Istanbul talks. The statements were made at a joint press conference between Erdogan and Zelensky. The press conference, along with the handshake, lasted exactly 11 minutes and 30 seconds. Well, that is, these are productive negotiations. Look. During today's talks, we stressed the need to continue the Istanbul process in a pragmatic and results-oriented manner. However, first of all, it is necessary to accelerate the steps that will lead to a just and lasting peace, paving the way for a truce. In this regard, Turkey is always ready to discuss possible solutions with Russia as well. We also consider it important for our ally, the United States of America, to participate in this process. We discussed the situation in the diplomatic sphere in detail. Now a lot of processes have been activated. And we strive to ensure that all this activity is aimed specifically at peace, at a decent peace and guaranteed security. We are making great efforts to resume prisoner exchanges and return home the Ukrainian military and civilians held by